Welcome back to Teacher Jeff 40K. Today I wanted to put together a series of small point lists because I find, maybe this is just personally, but I find that making a list for smaller point games is actually quite difficult compared to larger point games. In larger point games, often the problem is, you want to use all your toys, but you just don't have enough points for it. So you get to use a whole bunch of really cool stuff. And for larger games, I'm talking like anywhere from 1750 to 2000 to 2500 points. So I wanted to put together some lists today up to 1000 points. So I wanted to make 3 lists. The first one is going to be only 500 points, which is probably the trickiest one. And then 750 and then 1000, which gets a little easier to work with. The reason I think the 500 point list is very difficult is because with the addition of command points, it tempts players to try to fit in certain detachments to get those command points. And at 500 points, it is incredibly hard to do for most armies. Now, it is entirely possible to do it, and it's even viable in some cases. I would say maybe Imperial Guard or Tyranids or Orcs, basically horde armies that have incredibly cheap troop infantry can probably get in a battalion detachment within 500 points and still be viable. Now, I am, of course, using my Space Marines. This, again, like a lot of the lists I put together, is not just for Space Marine players, but it's used as a rubric. I basically have, the most of the stuff I have is Space Marines. I have a Tau army. It's not that big, and it's not very customizable. I will be putting together a Tau list relatively soon, though. But I use Space Marines as sort of a rubric, a general idea. So when I use a unit, I'm going to explain its purpose, and the purpose typically can be mimicked by virtually any unit in any other army. So this, again, is just sort of a rubric to build an army. And it's not, again, not specifically for Space Marines. I just happen to have a crap load of Space Marines. So anyhow, without further ado, I'll get down to it. So the 500 point list is actually right in front of you. I'll take you through it. I have the other parts off camera. So what I did here is I actually only made a patrol detachment. It'll only net me 3 command points, but I would far rather have a massive, obviously not massive, a small group of units of my choosing versus pigeonholing myself to get command points so that I can have extra command points for the battle. So I would need 3 troops and say 2 HQs for a battalion. In some cases, you could very easily do a 500 point list that is, say, a Vanguard detachment. That one is the one that's 1 HQ and 3 elites. Or any of those varieties of ones. The one with 3 fast attack and 1 HQ. The one with 3 heavy and 1 HQ. I've chosen not to do this because it's only 1 more command point, and it's not... Command points are incredibly valuable, but I find having the units that you want in your army to fulfill a purpose is far more important than having command points. So you'll be getting 3 command points with this. Again, this is a rubric. It can be done in different ways with different armies. If you find a way to get a different detachment in at 500 points and you still get the units you want, good for you. That's pretty solid. So what I've done here, let's turn this guy on here, the calculator. This, of course, too, we'll be using the point changes from chapter approved 2018 because it is now January 2019. So we've got the point adjustments And this list takes a little bit of advantage of that, but not a heck of a lot. So first things first, we've got an HQ choice. I have a captain on bike who is 88 points, plus you have to give him the twin bolt gun right here, so that's 2 points. So as sort of a general rule now, the captain on bike is 90 points base, and then you have to give him his equipment. I've given him a power maul, so that's another 4 points. And I forget whether he has to take another weapon, like another shooting weapon. I believe he's equipped stock the same way the captain is, with a special issue, or no, a mastercrafted bolt gun, a chainsword, and a bolt pistol. What you can do to sort of get around this is, because they can take things from the pistols list, it's perfectly viable to have a captain, if you want to save points, to just give him a second bolt pistol because it's free. I'm just going to double check, but otherwise that can still be done where I can give him a second bolt pistol. He can't fire them both, but it reduces the points of the unit and it makes him 94 points. And believe me, reducing the points of a unit in a 500-point list is very, very, very important. So let's see. I'm going to have a look over here at the captain on bike just to make sure. Probably should have done my homework first, huh? Chainsword, mastercrafted bolt gun, bolt pistol. That's what I thought. So the mastercrafted bolt gun can be swapped out for something in the pistols, combi weapons, or melee weapons. So we've chosen pistol, and we're going to give him another bolt pistol. I suppose it's possible to give him a chainsword instead, which would give him 1 extra attack in close combat only with the chainsword. Or you could give him a bolt pistol and have him shoot in close combat. Either or, it doesn't really change a heck of a lot. So he's got 2 pistols. He's a cowboy, right? He's riding on a bike. It's sort of a horse. Anyways, so we've got Captain Cowboy, and he's going to be leading the charge. He's the only HQ choice in the list. The reason I've chosen the bike captain is because captains have their aura ability, which is very good, but also he's got mobility. So because, oops, sorry, buddy. Because the army is very sparse at 500 points, this guy can move around, move long distances to try and get into position to add his reroll ones to hit aura ability to whatever may need it, depending on the map, the mission, whatever. And he's tougher at toughness 5, which is, man, in a 500-point game is pretty big. Then I've got 2 troop units. I've got a unit of scouts. You've probably seen these guys before. If you've watched my videos before, you'll see a lot of the same units, maybe in certain variations. Some I just love to take straight up. And this is one of them. So it's 5 scouts, and one of them's got a heavy bolter. The others have bolters. So this comes into 65 points, including the heavy bolter. And so we're at what, 159. I don't know whether that's going to be visible later, but I'll keep count. Don't worry. So it's a troop choice. So for objectives, this is a good thing. It's also a choice that allows you to deploy in a variety of different places. Now, not a lot of armies have units like this that are both troops and that can deploy outside of your deployment zone. So that's one of the places where Space Marines kind of shine. But a cheap troop choice is a great call, and I've taken 2 of them. So I've taken another squad. I would probably take them with bolters, but I actually don't have the models. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a squad of 5 with shotguns. So that's going to be 55 points for that squad. So we're at 214 now. So I've got 2 troop choices. So that's 2 choices of troops that can capture objectives and deploy outside of my deployment zone and do a little bit of shooting as well. So I've got an HQ and 2 troops, and then the last 2 choices, I've taken 2 heavy support choices. So I've taken, first I'll get to this because he'll come later. So I've taken a squad of Devastators with 4 missile launchers. So why not las cannons? I hear somebody asking in the background. So a few reasons. Number 1, missile launchers became slightly cheaper with chapter approved. That is not the main reason, though. That's just a nice little bonus. So they are now 20 points a missile launcher instead of 25, which was the equivalent of a las cannon. So first let's add these guys up. So it's 65 points for the squad, plus an additional 13 points. I've added an extra guy just to be the first one to die or a meat shield. So I've added him. And then the 4 missile launchers, which will cost us 80 points for the 4. So we're now at 372. So here, and I've also given the the sergeant a chainsword and a bolt pistol, just in case these guys get charged. He's got extra attacks in close combat. It's not going to be a heck of a lot, but it'll help. So yeah, the missile launchers. Why the missile launchers? In a 500-point game, you could be dealing with anything. I mean, I guess that's true of any game, really, but realistically, you will not see a hell of a lot of heavy armor in a 500-point game. You may see something, and I've got an example of it right here, but you're not going to see a heck of a lot of tanks or super high toughness monstrous creatures, heavy armor. So the the crack missiles from the missile launchers, the strength 8, -2 AP, D6 damage, is really good enough at dealing with that. Plus you've got 4 of them. And with the Signum from the Sergeant, one of them hits on 2s. It's good enough. But also, should you need the firepower to deal with, say, someone's really, really cheap battalion detachment at 500 points, you've got frag missiles as well. So you can dump these missiles into a light infantry squad and hope to knock them out of the play as well. So the versatility, I think, in this case really shines with the missile launcher. Now, always with the missile launcher, it's never as good at killing tanks and heavies as the las cannon, and it's never as good at anti-infantry as the heavy bolter. But you can do both. You have both for that job, and this is ideal when you have no idea what you will be facing. So you've got 4 missile launchers, you can hit heavy targets, you can hit light targets, and you've got range of 48 inches. It's a solid choice. And then finally, I've added a Vindicator. This is a tank I use rarely because it's got 1 gun and it's short range, and you have to move it to fire it, and moving and firing heavy weapons gives you a penalty. I guess it does have a storm bolter, but I don't really count that. It's an extra couple of shots. So this guy right here is 125, and then 2 points for the storm bolter. So that brings us to 499. So 1 point off, not bad. So the Vindicator, what does it do? 1, if it manages to shoot its gun, it kills a lot of different things. It does gain a bonus if you're targeting a unit of 5 models or more, so you can target infantry with it. You get D6 shots instead of D3, and it's strength 10, AP -3, D6 damage. It's a heavy, mean gun. But the purpose actually is an intimidator. So the job of this tank is to rush up the gut and be a pain in the butt to deal with. It's toughness 8, which is one of the big things. Now, if you remember, taking the missile launchers was because you're not going to see a heck of a lot of heavy armor. And this is kind of what I've done, is I've taken this guy. I know that's kind of a contradiction, but you're not going to see a heck of a lot of this. I mean, if you hit this thing with 4 missile launchers, it will eventually, take some wounds and get damaged, or maybe someone will tie it up with some infantry, something along those lines. But this thing with toughness 8 and it rushing up the gut, it's really scary, especially with a 500-point army facing you. There isn't a whole lot that is dedicated to deal with this. Now, the opponent may have, let's say they have 4 las cannons instead of these missile launchers. Okay, so the 4 las cannons nuke this thing and take it out. But then those 4 las cannons aren't really all that useful anymore. I mean, I guess you could fire at the other person's weapons in the back, but they're not really the ideal targets for it. So the idea of bringing those 4 las cannons to a 500-point game, you're not really going to see it. At least I don't think so anyways. Yeah, so I've brought this guy as an intimidator and just to sort of stay alive and be a pain in the butt. So, and the gun is kind of a bonus. It's incredibly damaging. You get a storm bolter as well. This thing's really tough. So it's a pretty good unit to use in a very small point game. Tactics for this army, I mean, I would say start the captain with them close by so that they get the rerolls to hit, and then maybe depending on what the map looks like or how I want to do things, I might follow the captain behind this to give it the reroll ones to hit. But that's just sort of spitballing at this point. So that would be the 500-point list. You've got troops to capture objectives. You've got something to deal with both infantry and tanks or heavies. So you've got that sort of taken care of. And then these guys also deal with infantry as well as capturing objectives. You got a great big intimidation piece that deals with just about anything with this gun. And then you've got an aura buff commander who's decent in close combat with his power maul and has a twin bolt gun to shoot at some infantry as well. So at 500 points, I mean, every gun kind of matters, right? So having a twin bolt gun that hits on 2s that fires 4 shots at 12 inches is good. So yeah, that's the 500-point list. So we're going to move some of this stuff aside as I make the 750-point list. So the next tier up. Now, what you could do is totally rebuild from scratch and make a whole new list, and you could definitely make something that way. In fact, in some ways it might be better than what I'm going to do, but I'm going to add to this and kind of complement it as well. Now, again, this list that I'm building, this is not like the perfect list or the most math efficient list out there. This is a list that is going to do well, that can contend with quite a few things, and will see you with a good chance of winning. So what have I added for 250 points? So I've got them marked over here. First, I have got a squad of scout bikes. Scout bikes are now incredibly cheap and just as effective. So that is 69 points. I haven't added any weaponry to them, so it's 69 points, including the twin bolt guns they have on top. If you've seen some of my other videos, I've used these guys a lot before. I've made a video on scout bikes, why they rock. Lots of shots. They all come stocked with a shotgun as well, so if you're in the 12-inch range for the twin bolt guns to fire 4 shots each, you also get 2 shots with the shotguns. And each of them comes with a combat knife, which gives all of them an extra attack in close combat. Plus, they move faster than regular bikes. They move 16 inches. They're incredibly fast, great at dealing with massed infantry. So we've got a speedy unit that can deal with massed infantry. What does this do? This complements this tank. It could probably move up with it, clear the way of some of the infantry while this guy deals with some more juicy targets, or it could, move around the flank and do something else. Either way, we still got a lot of points to play with. So next, what I've done is I've taken a little more anti-heavy. And I've given it some variety as well to kind of complement the game style. Again, another of my favorite units. I've got a Venerable Dreadnought with twin las cannon and a missile launcher. So he's now 140 points. So that brings us to 708. So 140 points, you get a twin las cannon and a missile launcher. So again, another missile launcher to potentially deal with infantry, but realistically, you're probably going to target twin las cannon and the missile launcher at one target. You also have the option to split fire though, and this guy hits on 2s, which is great. Also, Wisdom of the Ancient Stratagem allows him to become a captain for one phase, which is very cool. So if you have him, say, next to the Devastators, he will be getting everything reroll ones to hit. And also the venerable rule of ignoring wounds on a 6. So very, very useful unit, especially in small point games. But I would argue even so, more so, or not more so, but equally useful in big point games as well. Very reliable and pretty tough. So that brings us to 708. So we don't have a heck of a lot left. But what I have done is I've added another speedy unit. I've added an attack bike. So that is 37 points with the heavy bolter and twin bolt gun. It brings us to 745. So for 5 points, I mean, you could add, you could add a plasma pistol to the captain or something. You could give a power sword to a sergeant somewhere. You could easily do something like that, but I'm not too worried about that. So with this guy, you get a couple of things. One, you get an incredibly cheap unit that's pretty tough. It's got 4 wounds and it's toughness 5. It's got Space Marine armor, so it's solid. It moves quickly. It's got a heavy bolter and it's got a twin bolt gun. So again, more anti-infantry firepower, but also late game stuff. If your scouts are dead, because they will be sort of farther up depending on how you deploy, and their armor is not as good. Realistically, most of these guys will probably be dead towards the end of the game. This guy is great at capturing objectives late game, assuming no one else is on them. So it's a great speedy little unit. It can throw out a couple of shots, which is good, and it can speed around and collect objectives, and it can also lend support to any of the other speedy units. So it could lend support, maybe ride up and help the scouts out who have deployed ahead, go alongside this guy and add a little extra anti-infantry power, or ride up with these scouts as well. So that brings us to 745. That's the list we've got for 750. So pretty decent. We've got some anti-tank, we've got some anti-infantry, we've got some speed, we've got some troops. So it's a pretty good all-rounder list. Again, we've still only got the 3 command points, but at 750, I'm still not that worried about it. At 1,000 points, we've made some changes, though. So again, most armies should be able to do something similar to this, at least if they're shooty in that category. So backfield guns, some speedy upfront harassment units, some cheap troops, something that's sort of a distraction or, very damaging and maybe really tough, and a solid HQ unit to lend support. There's a very general rubric. I mean, you could easily implement this to a melee-only army if you want as well, and say this guy, let's say we're going Tyranids, you'd have some speedy units that can either deploy differently or whatever. You've got your squads of Gaunts. Maybe you've got some backfield support and something like a Biovore or something like that, or something along those lines. A quick HQ to help out, and these would maybe be replaced by, say, Carnifexes or something equally tough and scary that can rush up the board and deal some damage. So that is our 750 list. You can tell I don't know a heck of a lot about Tyranids. I faced them a few times. I remember a lot of the names from previous editions. I faced them a couple of times in this edition. They're creepy, but yes, not an expert on Tyranids. Anyhow, so to put it to 750, or sorry, to put it to 1,000 points, I have added enough to make this army, because I'm going to be adding to this army one more time. Again, you can just totally rebuild from scratch and maybe make a more optimal list, but I'm just giving you examples here. So for another 250 points, I will add one more HQ and one more troop, in addition to some other stuff, to make this a battalion detachment. So that would give me 2 HQs and 3 troops. And then all the others are extra. So I would get those extra command points, which would be, I would say, far more necessary in a 1,000-point game. So what have I got? So first, let's get the HQ. I have got a lieutenant. The lieutenant comes with a master-crafted bolt gun, and a power fist. So I've got him added to the list. So a lieutenant is 60 points, 3 for the master crafted bolt gun, and now 9 for the power fist, because that went down in points as well. So we're at 817. So he's good at lending the reroll ones to wound rule with now more stuff that's probably going to be in the backfield. I'm going to add one more thing too. You'll see that later. So he's good. That's why he's on foot. Also because it's cheap. I didn't want to give him a jump pack. So he's relatively cheap, but also he can sort of help out deal with any charges in your back lines. He's pretty decent in close combat, and the rerolling ones to wound is really helpful. So that's the other HQ. And for the other troop choice, I've got a third squad of scouts. This time I've got a sniper squad. So I've given them camo cloaks and sniper rifles. So that is now 80 points a unit. So 80 points. Used to be 90, but because of the way things work with chapter approved in the points, basically they become cheaper because the sniper rifles each became 2 points cheaper. So camo cloaks and sniper rifles, character hunting, but also the big thing here is to become that third troop choice that's actually useful. I thought about adding maybe an intercessor squad or a tactical squad, but these guys kind of operate well on their own. They can hunt characters with the sniper rifles. They can deploy up the board, and they take advantage of cover, and at 80 points for the unit of 5, it's pretty cheap. Then what I've actually done is I've taken out the attack bike. So I removed that. So let's minus 37 points here. And then I've added a second Venerable Dreadnought. So that's another 140 points. And that gets us to 1,000 points exactly, which is always nice. So it's the same thing, cut and paste. More las cannons and another missile launcher, backfield support, devastating weaponry. And at 1,000 points, you're far more likely to see heavier stuff. So having the extra las cannons that are incredibly reliable is very helpful. So that's why this guy kind of shines a little bit more too. He can be set towards the back, either with the Devastators or with this guy, or these guys rather, to reroll ones to wound, which is really, really helpful. So at 1,000 points, you've got a decent amount of anti-heavy, so you can deal with heavy stuff, but also you can deal with light stuff as well in the scout bikes. Potentially this guy, who can kind of deal with both, but we're not expecting him to do a heck of a lot. The missile launchers here and here as well can, in a pinch, be used to deal with infantry. And then, of course, your 3 troop squads also have anti-infantry weapons. Again, we're not counting on them to carry the load against anti-infantry, but bolt guns, shotguns, and sniper rifles are not bad, especially if your opponent brings a lot of cheap, weak guys. I'm thinking guardsmen or gaunts. You're going to kill them pretty easily with this sort of stuff. And you only lose the attack bike out of the list, so I'll move him. So again, I've put this together quickly as a sort of rubric to give you an idea of the stuff you may need to make a list at very small point games. You want, in the small list, you want at least one thing to effectively deal with heavy stuff. You don't want to invest too much. One, because typically anti-heavy weaponry and units are expensive. So at 500, it's hard to come by. So that's why you want one that's pretty solid. And then you want maybe a couple of troops for some capping and a support character and some other stuff as well. So all in all, we've got 1,000 points right here. And yeah, we've got a pretty solid list that can contend with just about everything. Obviously, if your opponent brings 1,000 points worth of infantry, you may have some problems, but he's probably going to have a few problems as well too. Not having some either tank or monster support, that sort of thing. Anyhow, I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.